Hi guys, I hope you're all I hope you're all well and you've had a lovely weekend. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mr. Davis. I'm one of the science teachers at St Leonard's Academy, and I'm going to be helping Miss Page with some of the online lessons going forward for the rest of this year. I've had a look over some of the work that you've done previously, and the lesson we're going to be doing today is all about blood and blood vessels. And this will tie in quite nicely to some of the diffusion and active transport and some of those works that you've done over recent topics. So what you're going to be needing today is a piece of paper and a notebook and a pen or a pencil. And if you haven't got those at the moment, if you just pause this video quickly, run off and grab those, and then head back, sit yourselves down, get yourselves ready, and we'll jump into the lesson just shortly. Okay, so today's lesson is going to be about the different parts of blood and what blood is made up of, and how we can relate the structure of the different components to the function that they provide. We're also going to be looking at some of the blood vessels that are used to transport blood around our body, and again, trying to see if we can relate any of the structures that these vessels have to the functions that they provide to our body. Structure and function links are very, very common and very, very key through biological concepts. So before we get into blood vessels, what I'd like you to have a quick go at is this do it now. So we've got 4 questions on the board here. These are all drawn from the previous topics that you guys have been covering with Miss Page. So if you can just pause the video now, spend a few minutes trying to see if you can answer as many of these questions as you can. Okay, guys, welcome back. I hope well done for having a go at that. I am going to run through these answers with you now. If you can give yourself a mark and a score out of 4 as we go through these answers. Okay, so what process happens in the mitochondrion? If you think back to your respiration lessons, we should be able to remember that the mitochondrion is the site of aerobic respiration, or respiration in eukaryotic cells. By what process do particles move from a greater concentration to a place of lower concentration? Well, if you think back to the diffusion lesson that you did with Miss Page, then we'll be able to recall that answer as being diffusion. What do ribosomes make? Well, ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis within eukaryotic cells, and these are therefore they make proteins. And what is the word equation for aerobic respiration? Well, the word equation for aerobic respiration is glucose plus oxygen is equal to carbon dioxide plus water and energy. So there's your 4 answers, guys. Give yourself a mark out of 4 for that. Well done for having a go. And we're going to move on to our lesson about blood and blood vessels. So there are 4 main components to blood that we're going to be looking at today. And they consist of the largest component of your blood is made of a straw-colored liquid that is known as plasma. And what that does is that enables the transportation of different nutrients and waste products around your body. That's what the plasma's main role is. And it's also there to suspend the cellular parts of your blood. The next part of your blood is red blood cells, or erythrocytes. These represent 45% of all your blood, and they actually do the main function for those is to transport oxygen around your body to all the living cells of your body. Every cell that is alive in your living cell of your body requires oxygen so it can respire, produce energy, and go about its function. Now, the very, very small remaining part of your blood that's left, the white blood cells and platelets, they actually make up less than 1% of your blood, and they also perform a very, very important role. Your white blood cells, we're only going to be looking at a couple of different types of white blood cells, but there are a large number of different types of blood cells. But the 2 we're going to be looking at today are those known as Vega Sites and Lymphocytes was the other one. I can't remember the other one was going to be. Phagocytes and lymphocytes, and their main role is to fight off infection, to fight things that can make you ill. And the other one is platelets. These are small parts of cell, fragments of cells that don't have a nucleus. They're a little bit sticky, and they're what you use to form scabs when we cut ourselves, and their main function is to prevent the loss of blood. So we've got here some keywords, and we've also got some common names that you probably come across throughout your earlier work you were doing in years 7 and 8. What we've got here is 4 words down the left-hand side in yellow. What I'd like you to do is just to pause this video very quickly, to write those words out, and then to draw a single line from each of those yellow from the yellow boxes and connect it with a common name, a word that you may have been more familiar with on the right hand side. Now you will see that there are 4 terms on the left hand side and only 3 terms on the right hand side, so you're only going to need to draw 3 lines, guys. One of the terms on the left hand side doesn't have a common name. So just pause the video now, write these words out, and then draw an arrow to connect the two, the keyword, the scientific name, if you would, to the common name. Just pause the video now and have a go at that. Okay, guys, well done for having a go at that. We're going to run through the answers now, just to make sure you've got them all correct. I'm sure you have. Now, I did point out before you started that there are 4 answers down, 4 words down the left-hand side and only 3 on the right-hand side. So we're going to ignore the first one because there isn't actually a common name for plasma. We're going to move straight down to erythrocytes. Now, that's the scientific name for the red blood cell. Erythrocytes is a red blood cell. One of the ways you can always tell whether you're talking about a cell, at least, is if you see the term sites at the end of a word. So you can see erythrocytes means red blood cell. And this word here, sites, refers to cell. Platelets are the cell fragments that are used in blood clotting. And lymphocytes and phagocytes are white blood cells. And again, we've got this ending of the word here, sites, that lets us know that they're cells. So plasma, we'll go into a bit more detail about plasma. Plasma, as you can, as I said, it's a straw-colored liquid, and its main function is to carry dissolved carbon dioxide, glucose, and urea. So that are one of the key nutrients. Glucose and carbon dioxide and urea are some of the key waste products that are going to be produced and required by the different cells of our body. And actually what the plasma does is supply the nutrients and take away the waste products. And it does this very effectively. It also is really good at supporting and suspending all the different cellular components of blood to enable them to actually be able to flow around our circulation system. So it's a really, really important part of our blood. And as we know, as I said before, it actually makes up 55% of all the blood that's in our body. Now we're going to move on to erythrocytes. Now these are the red blood cells, and they're erythrocytes, and you can always tell them because they do look very, very distinctly red. Now erythrocytes contain a substance known as hemoglobin, and this is an amazing chemical, and what it actually does is it binds onto oxygen. And so by having that hemoglobin inside them, they can bind onto oxygen as the red blood cell passes through the lung and then carry that oxygen to all the different cells around the body that require oxygen. Now, erythrocytes are very, very uniquely shaped, and they have this very, very unique adaptation to enable them to be able to do that job as well as is possible. And the first of their adaptations is actually they have no nucleus. They're the only cell in the human body that is living but doesn't actually have any genetic material in it. It doesn't have any nucleus, and that's because it doesn't need to undergo any cellular division. But we're getting off topic there. But by not having a nucleus, it allows it to have this pinch shape in the middle of its body. It's pinched on both sides in the middle, and that vastly increases its surface area. And that is, if you can remember back to your diffusion lessons, by increasing the the surface area, we can really rapidly increase the rate of diffusion. And that's what erythrocytes need to be able to do. They need to be able to diffuse oxygen into them to get it to the hemoglobin so they can grab hold of it. And then when they've carried it to the cell that's going to need that oxygen, they need to be able to diffuse the oxygen back out of the cell. So there's lots of diffusion that occurs with red blood cells, and they've got this special shape that allows them to do that. We're going to move on to the first of the white blood cells we're going to be covering today, and that's the lymphocyte. Now, lymphocytes are one of my favorite white blood cells. As I say, there are a number of them, but what lymphocytes do is they identify and mark pathogens for destruction. Now, if you don't know what a pathogen is anything that can get into your body, any organism that can get into your body and can do you harm. Some really obvious examples of those under the current climate, the current things that are going on, the COVID or the coronavirus, producing COVID-19 is a pathogen. And white blood cells are able to identify what things that are in our body that are pathogens, and it grabs hold of them and holds onto them, and it marks them for destruction by other cells of the immune system. And they do this by having these amazingly specific hooks called antibodies that recognize and attach different bits of pathogens, and that's how they're able to stick to the pathogens. They've got these very special hooks that only bind to very specific parts of the pathogen, and they bind onto it, and then the other cells of the immune system know that this is a pathogen and that they're going to have to do something about it. Another white blood cell that we'll be looking at, I'm gonna go through for you now, is the Vega Site. Now, these are also amazingly cool cells. These are cool for an entirely different reason. They don't have these tiny little hooks that the lymphocytes have. But what a Vega Site does is when it comes across a pathogen, it literally eats the pathogen. It engulfs it inside of it, and then it has lots of digestive enzymes inside of the cell that can work to break that pathogen down to stop it being able to cause us any harm. So that's a Vega Site. So we've done a couple of white blood cells now. And again, its function is to defend the body from pathogens, and it does that by engulfing and digesting the pathogen. So we'll move on to the last of the components of blood that we're going to be looking at today, and that is the platelets. Now, these, as I said earlier, are tiny fragments of cells that are floating around in our bloodstream. They've got no nucleus, and they're a little bit sticky as well. And so whenever there's a break in the blood vessel or a break in the skin and blood starts to flow out of the body, what these platelets do is they stick together and they clog up the opening where that blood is flowing from, and then they start to form a hard scab layer over that opening, and that stops any of the blood from flowing out of the body, and it prevents blood loss. So guys, I've realised that I've just thrown loads of facts at you, and what I want you to try and do now, if you can, is to try and recall those facts and put them into this table that I'm showing on the screen here. So if you can draw out a table like this, if you can pause the video now, draw out a table like this one, and then fill in the function and the adaptation for each of the 5 components that we've just covered about. That's the 2 white blood cells, 2 different types of white blood cells, the red blood cells, the plasma, and the platelets. And if you can write down a function, what their job is, what their role is, and what their special adaptation that they have that enables them to do that role as well as is possible. So if you just pause the video now, move on to drawing that out for us. If you're struggling with being able to recall it, or you can always rewind the video and just play the last few minutes over again, and that will give you all the information that you need to be able to complete this table. Okay, guys, welcome back. I hope that table wasn't too difficult for you guys and you were able to recall most of the functions. We're going to go through them now, so don't worry if you're not sure if you've got them all completely right. We will go through them now. So we're going to start at the top of the table. Plasma, its main function, if you can remember, is to transport dissolved nutrients and waste products in the blood. So this is all the glucose that the cells need for respiration, but also all the carbon dioxide that they produce during respiration away from. So it's bringing nutrients to and waste products away from all the different cells that need it, that's supplied by the blood vessels. But it's also other really important job is that it literally suspends the blood cells and it allows them to flow around in our circulation system. So the urethra site was the next one, and they have no real adaptation really other than being water or being a liquid that allows them to dissolve these nutrients, but that's not really an adaptation. Erythrocytes. Now, these guys are the red blood cells, and remember, these are the guys that have the hemoglobin in them, and they are the ones that carry the oxygen to all the cells in our body. Really, really vital part of our blood system, and their special adaptation, I don't know if you can remember, but their special adaptation was that they had no nucleus, and that allowed them to have that biconcave shape, that pinch side on either side, which allowed them to have a larger surface area, and which also allowed them to increase the rate of diffusion. Now, I've only put the adaptations as being no nucleus and biconcave shape, but if you've also put down to increase the rate of diffusion, I will accept that as that's a perfectly happy answer as well. And then we're going to move on to lymphocyte. Now, this was the first of the white blood cells that we covered. Now, the lymphocyte's main role is to identify the pathogens as they get into our body. These are the cells that identify them using those very special hooks called antibodies. And these are what are going to attach onto the different parts of the pathogen and allow the other parts of the immune system to know that that's a pathogen and that they need to do something about it. Seeing as we're talking about one of those other cells of the immune system, the Vega Site's another white blood cell. And these guys engulf and digest pathogens. Now, they actually wrap their outer membrane around the pathogen, taking it all the way inside them. And then they contained lots of digestive enzymes to enable them to break those pathogens down. And we move finally on to the platelets. These guys form scabs to prevent blood loss, and they do it by being sticky fragments of cells with no nucleus that can stick to bind up and can block that opening if there's a tear or a rupture or a cut in any way. So we've got a bit of a copy and complete paragraph for you guys to do here, or a couple of sentences for you to do here, guys. This is just to really bed in all the different parts and really get this tied into your brains, all the different parts of blood and the different roles that they perform. So again, if you just pause this video, it shouldn't take you too long, a few minutes, use the word bank at the bottom and just drop the different words into it, and we'll go through the answers once you've had a chance to have a go. Okay, guys, well done for having a go at that. Now, we'll go through the answers now. The first space we had at the beginning of the sentence, blood is a mixture of different types of cells suspended in a straw-coloured liquid called, I'm hoping most people have got this one right, because it's plasma. The main functions of blood are to carry oxygen and nutrients to the body's cells and to remove waste products and protect the body against infection. So they're all the kind of different roles that the blood can, and the main functions of the blood. The different components of the blood are adapted to carry out different functions. Okay, guys, give yourself a tick for each of those answers if you got them correct, and a mark out of 5. Well done for having a go. It doesn't matter if you didn't get them right. The main thing is we have a go. If you didn't get them right, just jot down the correct answers that you can see on the board at the moment with a different coloured pen if you've got one to hand. All right, moving on. So we've covered a lot of the four main components of the actual blood itself. Now we're going to look at the different vessels that are used to transport that blood to every single cell in our body. And as I say, that really is so important that we get enough nutrients and enough oxygen to all the different cells of our body. Now, there's three different types of blood vessels that we're going to be looking at today. You can see with this diagram here that two of them are shown here, that we're looking at veins and arteries. Now, you often see these kinds of diagrams and they're a little bit misleading because it looks a little bit as if your arteries are only down one side of your body and your veins are only down the other side of your body. That really isn't the case. They run in parallel with one another, and everywhere that you've got arteries going, you will have veins going. The reason these diagrams are often laid out like this is to make it a little bit clearer and a little bit easier for you to view them. But wherever you've got veins on the right-hand side of the image that you're looking at, there will be mirror veins on the left-hand side, and exactly the same with the arteries that you can see there as well. Now, the blood vessels that we have to transport blood around, we've got three main types that we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at veins, arteries, and capillaries. Now, each of those blood vessels occur at a certain part of the circulation system of our bodies, and they all have very different structures, because much like the specialized cells that you were looking at a few weeks ago, much like the red blood cells and the white blood cells and the different components of blood that we've just been looking at, the structure that they do gives us a real good clue as to the function that these parts of the circulation system are performing. Now, arteries take the blood away from the heart. They have what we call a very narrow lumen, or they have a very narrow opening in the middle of the vessel, and they have a really thick layer of elastic muscle fibers in the wall of the artery. And that's really important, because as the blood leaves the heart, it's got loads of pressure. The heart's an amazingly effective pump, and it pumps the blood at such a high pressure that if it didn't have this very thick layer and these elastic fibers within its wall, it would actually rupture very quickly. So the thick layer of elastic and muscle fibers that make up the walls of arteries are mainly there to allow the pressure, to allow the artery to withstand the massive pressure produced by the heart. The small lumen, the small opening at the center, enables the arteries to maintain that pressure that's produced by the heart, to make sure the blood can be pumped all the way around the body. Now, I'm going to do this slightly out of sequence for the way that the blood flows, because the blood flows from the arteries through into the capillaries, and then from the veins into the veins and back to the heart. So the arteries are taking blood away from the heart, the veins are taking blood to the heart, and the capillaries are the place where all the exchanging, all the getting the oxygen and the nutrients to the cells occur, and also taking on all the waste products, all the carbon dioxide and urea that need to be gotten rid of and exposed of. That's where that happens, is in the capillaries. Now, when we look at the veins and for returning the blood back to the heart, the blood has lost a lot of its pressure as it's gone through the artery and gone through the capillaries and is back at the heart. So it doesn't need to have that really thick, strong wall. It's got a much thinner wall, a vein has, when you compare it alongside a similar artery. And it's got a much larger lumen, a much larger gap in the middle of that vessel. And that's because it reduces the resistance of the blood as it flows back towards the heart. So the pressures drop, so they don't need to be really thick and elasticated. And also to ensure that the blood can actually get back to the heart, has a very large opening to reduce that pressure. Now, they've actually got one other very special adaptation that really is key for their function, and that is valves. So we're going to cover valves in a little bit more detail a couple of slides on, but these valves prevent the blood from flowing back down the veins and all our blood basically collecting by gravity at our feet. Now, capillaries, as I said, I jumped over them. I'm going to come back to them now. These are amazing vessels. And as I say, this is the real business end of where the blood gets to do the job it's supposed to do. Because capillaries are throughout our entire body. And these are the areas where the oxygen are able, as I say, is able to dissolve out of the red blood cells and out of the blood vessel and into the cells that require it. And the reason they're able to do that is because if you look at the diagram on the right-hand side, you can see that as the veins, as the arteries start reaching the capillaries, they branch many, many, many times, and they become much, much smaller. And what that does is it increases the surface area. Now, again, if we think back to what we were when you were doing your diffusion lesson a few weeks back, you'll know that by increasing the surface area, you can increase the rate of diffusion. Now, these tubes are also very, very narrow. Now, they're very, very narrow, and that means that you can literally almost get just one blood vessel, one blood cell, one red blood cell through the tubes, through the capillaries at any one point at a time. They've also got a very, very thin wall. The wall of the capillaries is actually 1 cell thick, and that is, again, to provide a short diffusion pathway. And this is to, again, improve the rate of diffusion of getting the oxygen and the nutrients out of the blood vessel to the cells that need it, and then taking on those waste products that are being produced by those cells and transporting them away for getting rid of. Now, we'll move on to the next slide. So just as a recap then, guys, veins carry the blood to the heart. Okay, they're often denoted in blue on diagrams. They symbolize deoxygenated blood. So that's blood that's lost all of its oxygen. It's given it all the oxygen away to the different cells that have needed it, and it's taken up loads of carbon dioxide and taken up all the waste products, and it's going to get rid of those later on. Arteries carry the oxygenated blood from the heart and lungs to all the other cells in our body, and that's always that's quite frequently denoted in red. But arteries begin with A and carry blood away from the heart. Okay, so that's a key way of being able to remember that. Arteries begin with A and they carry blood away from the heart. And connecting those two sets of systems, we've got the capillaries. And these are the really small blood vessels, really thin walls that pass very close to the cells that need the nutrients, that need the oxygen, and they're ideal for allowing diffusion to occur. So we've just got a quick paragraph here, guys. I'm going to get you just to copy this paragraph down, use the word bank. It's only 4 words. If you don't feel like copying the whole paragraph down, you can quite happily write numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then put the words in the appropriate places. But just pause the video now and have a go, either copying and completing this. That'll give you better notes for your revision. But if you do want to just write the words down, then that's more than acceptable as well. I'm happy you guys are engaging with the work that we're providing for you. So just pause the video now, a couple of minutes, have a go at that for me. Okay, guys, well done for having a go at that. We're going to go through the answers now. Hopefully you've all had a good stab at it. But arteries carry blood away from the heart and to the body, whereas veins carry blood back to the heart from the body. Capillaries are small blood vessels that connect the arteries and veins to the tissues that they are providing blood for. So give yourself a mark out of 4 for that, guys. Well done if you had a go. And we're going to move on to having a bit of a closer look at some of the structure that I spoke about it briefly just a minute ago. We're going to have another quick look at the structure of an arteries and veins and capillaries. And you can see this diagram here at the top gives you a really good, easy to see diagram where you've got the very thick wall of the artery and small lumen, the vein, much thinner wall, much larger lumen, and then the capillary, much, much smaller, but also that very, very thin wall, 1 cell thick wall. And that's key, some of the key aspects of those different vessels. And what we've also got just beneath this image is you can see down here some actual light microscopy of cross-section of both an artery and a vein. So you can see of the lower image, the cluster of cells. I don't know if you can see my pointer. Here is the artery. It's it's got a fairly small lumen, but a very thick wall. Whereas here we've got a vein. It's got a much, much, much larger lumen and a much thinner wall. Okay, so now what we've got here is a quick table. You don't have to actually write this out as a table, guys. I'm more than happy for you just to write down a subheading of arteries. And then what I want you to do is I want you to relate the structure that we have, that I've just previously highlighted. And I want you to comment on the function. So you don't have to write it out as a table. Write a small subheading of arteries, write the word thick elasticated walls, and then just write down what you think the function that those thick elastic walls provide for arteries. Do the same for lumen as well. Pause the video, give yourself a couple of minutes just to write down what you think those functions might be. Welcome back, guys. Well done for having a go at that. We'll quickly go through the answers now. Okay, so the thick elasticated walls are to withstand the high blood pressure that is being sent out by the heart. So as the heart pumps, it produces a massive amount of pressure. And if our arteries didn't have these thick elasticated walls, they would rupture very, very quickly. So it's to withstand that high pressure. And they have a small lumen to maintain that high pressure. And that enables the blood to get all the way around our body. So we're going to do the same thing for veins, guys. Again, just pause the video. It's just the subtitle of veins. Just write down the words for the structure and have a go at trying to see if you can attach a function that you think might be related to those structures. Okay, guys, well done for having a go at that. So we've got thin unelasticated walls. The blood pressure is really low by the time it's got to the veins, and therefore the veins just simply don't need to have those really thick elasticated walls. And so they don't need to have, they don't have the same kind of thick wall. They don't need to withstand that same pressure. What they do need, though, is a very, very large lumen, and they need that to reduce the resistance of the blood as it flows back to the heart. And they also have valves, and that's to, as I said, if you can remember, to prevent the backflow of blood. So that's to stop all the blood from collecting down by our feet, effectively. Okay, so before we move on to capillaries, I just want to show you this little animation. It's a really, really good demonstration of how those valves work to stop the blood flowing down, and also really how our veins work to enable the blood to go back to the heart. So what you can see here on the right hand side of the screen is a vein that's moving towards the heart, and the two large lumps that you can see either side of the vein are actually muscle. Now, our bodies have got muscles throughout them, and every time we contract or we move or we do anything with our muscles, they actually squash our veins very, very slightly, and that forces the blood upwards towards the heart. As it goes beyond that certain point, those valves will close, and as the muscle stops contracting, the blood doesn't flow back downwards because those valves close and stop it from flowing back down. It's a really, really key part of the adaptation of a vein that enables the blood to ensure the blood gets back to our heart, where it can then be pumped again at high pressure for our artery system. So the valve's key role is to prevent the backflow of blood. And then we're going to move on to capillaries, guys. As I said, we just finished this one off again. Same format as before, guys. When you're ready, just pause the video, give yourself a couple of minutes, subtitle the capillaries, write down the structure and and then write down how you feel that helps them to fulfill their function or what their function might be. Okay, guys, well done for having a go at that. We'll quickly nip through the answers of these ones. Capillaries, remember we said they were highly branched. They became very, very small. what that basically did was increase their surface area to volume ratio, and that vastly improves the rate of diffusion. So that allows them basically to get all of the nutrients and the oxygen out of the blood vessels and all the waste products into the blood vessels. As I say, remember guys, the capillaries really are the business end of the circulation system, and it really is the important part, and that increased surface area to volume ratio really does make the diffusion process work much more effectively. And to add to that, they're one cell thick, and that provides a reduced diffusion pathway, or a short pathway, and again that just speeds up the rate of diffusion. It allows them to diffuse the nutrients out, the oxygen out, and the waste products back in much more effectively. Okay guys, we're getting towards the end of the lesson. What I'd like you to quickly do is just quickly pause the video and then just tell me from these images what you think each of these different blood vessels are. What I will give you a bit of a tip is that none of these vessels have none of these images have a scale attached to them, and they are all taken at different levels of magnification. So don't go by the size of the image that you can see on the screen. Have a look at the structure of the different vessels you can see, and tell me if you can, and then have a go at trying to label these or name these blood vessels. Just write ABC in the margin and write the name as to which one you do, or which one you believe is right. We'll pause the video now, have a go at that, and we'll pop back in a few seconds to answer those questions. Okay, guys, well done for having a go. We'll go through the answers now. Now, the first one at the top, we've got a vein. Now, hopefully you were able to see that this has got a very large lumen size. It's got a very thin wall. And you may have even noticed these two little flaps that you can see of cells just come encroaching in from the sides there. These would actually form part of the valve. You can't see the whole valve because of the way that the microscope slide has been prepared, but these two flaps that you can see here and here would be the beginnings of a valve, or part of a valve. But what you can quite clearly see is a very thin wall and a very large lumen. We move on to number B. We can see that if we got number A right, number B is an artery. Now, this is taken at a much lower level of magnification than the vein is, but we can see that we've got quite a smaller lumen compared to the size of the blood vessel. And what we do quite clearly have, guys, is a very thick wall. That's, as I say, it's really important to aid the artery in withstanding that real high pressure that comes out from the blood vessel. And this is an image that's actually been taken and adapted from an electron microscope. And this is a capillary. So this is actually just one cell. We can see it's one cell thick here. This is actually part of a red blood cell that's traveling through the capillary. So you can see it's a very small size. We've got one cell structure that's making up that's improving that rate of diffusion, making it a shorter diffusion pathway, allowing those waste products to get into the bloodstream and the nutrients and oxygen to get out of the bloodstream. Okay, guys, so we're coming on to homework. We're very nearly done. I know I've waffled on for far too long. I hope you stuck with me. Well done for sticking this far. So what we got is a little bit of homework for you. We've got a practical. I've done this practical myself. It's quite an interesting one. What you do is you attach a section of artery and a section of vein onto a clamp stand, and then you attach a ruler along the side of that, and you add different weights to one end of either your vein or your artery. And as you add the weights, you measure how far that blood vessel stretches, and eventually you'll get to a point where you add too many weights and the blood vessel will snap and rupture and break. Now, what you can see here is actually someone's already done that. I'm going to move this over here. Get that out the way for you guys. What you can see here is that we've got a series of results from someone who's done that experiment. They've added different mass weights, 10 grams at a time, and then they've measured how much that blood vessel has stretched, how far it has stretched down on the ruler here. So when they've added 10 grams to a vein, it's stretched by 2 centimeters, whereas the artery only stretched by 1 centimeter. And when we get down to 70 grams, we'll see the vein has broken while the artery is extended down to 4 centimeters. What I'd like you guys to do is to think about the lesson that we've just had. Think about the structure and the function of the different blood vessels that we've been looking at. Think about the differences between veins and arteries. And I'd like you to have a go at trying to imagine you've done this experiment. These are your results. And what I'd like you to do is to write a short conclusion as to why these results have occurred. How did you get these results, and why do you think these results have happened? Now, there is some success criteria, a bit of a guideline for you guys. What you're going to need to do is link your answer, or ensure that part of your answer at least is linking to the thickness of the blood vessel. You also want to think about the elasticity of the blood vessel as well. Now, if you remember, one of those blood vessels has a much thicker wall and is much more elastic, and one of them doesn't. So you might want to use those kind of concepts and ideas when you're writing down your answer. Now, when you want to submit your answer, if you can go on to Showbee, www.showbee.com. You've got your class code on the screen there. I'm pretty sure you guys have all been diligently doing that, so hopefully you'll be able to navigate your way through. If you do have any problems, if you drop any emails to either myself or Miss Page, we'll be happy to guide you through that process. But have a go at trying to see if you can write a short conclusion for this practical, for this practical over here, where you're hanging weights on different types of blood vessel and you're measuring how far they stretch and how much weight is required before they break. Cool, guys. Use this table of results to write your conclusion and submit it on Showbee, class code 9LCB9. Right, well done for getting this far, guys. I really do take my hats off to you. It's a glorious, hot, sunny day, and I don't imagine you will much rather be outside, but get a bit more work done, and you can, with last knockings to do now, and that's our exit ticket. So just pause the video, have a quick go. All of these questions are all questions of stuff we've covered for the last little while I've been chatting to you. Have a go at them. Pause the video, have a go at them, and I'll be on hand at the end. We'll quickly run through the answers before I sign off, guys. All right, then. So pause the video, have a go at these questions. Okay, well done for having a go. Well done for sticking with me, guys. Thank you very much. We are, which of the blood vessels have thick elastic walls? Now, if you can remember, it was the arteries that had that thick elastic wall to withstand the high pressure coming straight out of the heart, because they're carrying blood away from the heart. Which blood vessels contain valves? Now, the valves were a very special adaptation of your veins, and that's to prevent the backflow of blood, stopping your blood from collecting all at your feet, basically. In which blood vessels does the diffusion of substances into and out of the blood vessels occur? Remember, these were the very specialized blood vessels that were highly branched, had a large surface area to volume ratio, and they had a very, very thin vessel wall, and they were the capillaries. So well done if you got that right, guys. Which cells are specially adapted to carry oxygen? That was the erythrocytes, or the red blood cells. If you've written either of those words down, I will happily accept those answers. As you're progressing through your science career, though, guys, it is quite important that you learn these key words. Erythrocyte is a key word, and it's the correct terminology. As I say, if you've written the word red blood cells, I'm happy for that to be your answer, but the correct and more accurate answer would be erythrocyte. And which blood cells engulf and digest pathogens? Well, I think we can guess that's probably one of the white blood cells that we were talking about earlier on. Can you remember which one of the two it was? It was Vega Sites. These are a type of white blood cell. And again, I will be happy if you put that answer down. But the actual really accurate answer that I would be looking for, if it were a 2-mark question, I'd be wanting Vega Sites effectively. It's not, it's only a go just to try and jog your memory and try and make sure that you've been able to recall some of the things that we've covered in today's lesson. Okay then guys, give yourself a mark out of 5 for that. Well done for sticking with us this long. You've done amazingly, guys. It's really quite impressive, and when I see the numbers of you that are engaging with these videos and are watching them on YouTube, it really is very heartening for us teachers. But well done, guys. I hope you have a lovely week. Remember, your homework you can submit onto Showbee for us if you can, and either myself or Miss Page or one of the other teachers will mark it and provide you some feedback with that. All right then, guys, thank you very much for today, and I look forward to seeing you in September, or I look forward to seeing you next week. Cool. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.